Hello everyone, 10,000 hours. That seems like a really lot of time, but they have found out that if you practice a craft for 10,000 hours over many years, you will really become a master at it. So they have looked at many students of the piano and professional ones that were really good, and they found out that they have practiced an average of around 10,000 hours. And I have done that myself. Actually, I have practiced around 12,000 or 15,000 hours in total over the whole of my life. And I want to break down a little bit on how much I have practiced at what age, because that's something that you have asked me a lot in the question rounds. And then I want to give you some advice on how much you should practice at a certain stage of your playing. And then also what the result of these practicing hours were for my playing, and if I really felt a difference after 10,000 hours. So let's get started. I started with the age of 5 years, and in the first year my teacher advised me to practice like half an hour a day, like 30 minutes, which is what I did, but soon I shifted to 2 times 20 minutes. That's something that everyone can do, no matter what job you have, if you study, if you have a very busy career. I started with 20 minutes in the morning before school, and then I practiced another 20 minutes when I get back home from school. So I think 40 minutes is something that everyone can do, and 45 minutes is something where you can honestly already make a lot of progress. Nowadays, as a real concert pianist, I also sometimes don't manage to practice more than 45 hours a day, depending on my travel schedule and rehearsal schedule. Anyways, I really discovered my love for music when I was around 8 years old. I discovered the book of Johann Sebastian Bach, of Preludes and Fugues, and I was really fascinated by this music. And then I decided that I wanted to become a musician. So I practiced a little bit more than 40 minutes a day. It was more like 1.5 hours actually. So I started practicing around 1.5 hours a day. But I often did that in one set. Sometimes I did 2 or 3 sets. It really depended on my school days, if I had school in the afternoon or not. And I kept that for quite a while, I think until I reached the age of 12. So if you're really a child, you don't need to practice for many hours if you want to become a professional musician. In my opinion, it's also always very important that you always develop your own personality, also at a later age, that you collect life experience, that you go on some adventures, that you form your relationships, that you read, that you visit the theater, that you go to concerts, that you travel, all these things. But especially as a child, you can also play your games. You don't have to practice the whole day. Also for you, if you're watching as a parent, your child doesn't have to practice for 6 hours when they start. Anyways, when I was around 12 years old, I got discovered by my later professor, Karl-Heinz Kämmerling, where I studied at the Mozarteum in Salzburg. And it was not that he told me I should practice a lot, but it was really that he said so many interesting things to me, and that he was demanding on my craft, that I then thought, well, I really want to practice more. I have to practice more in order to master the things he gave me, to master the pieces, and to really apply all the things we discussed in the lessons. So I remember coming home from the very first masterclass with him, and I practiced for around 3 to 4 hours because I was so motivated. I didn't keep that for all the time, but every time when I went to a masterclass with him, so full week of intense study, I practiced a lot. I practiced like 3 or 4 hours net time, meaning I don't count the breaks in between. That is something that you shouldn't do as well. If you say you practice 2 hours, that means you practice 2 hours of very concentrated time, and that's actually a lot. So in my opinion, you shouldn't practice much more than 3 to 4 hours of concentrated time over a longer period. Of course, if you have a competition coming up, if you have an exam coming up, I also had these moments where I practiced 6 hours, 7 hours of net time, but that's really a lot. Then really don't have a life for anything else. And as we have discussed previously, I believe it's really important to also form a personality and to make experiences that will enable you to express the emotions in the music. Everything else would be just way too abstract. Just practicing technique, then you can only offer technique. You know what I mean? So yeah. So back to my practice schedule. That was, yeah, until reached the age of 18. I was still going to school. You know, I did a normal. I graduated from school normally. And I've always practiced like 3 hours a day, and on the weekends I practiced 5 to 6 hours because I really wanted to become a concert pianist. And yeah, so after school in the afternoon I was often quite tired. I took a nap and then practiced after that for a few hours, but it really depended, and I always went with the flow. I always followed my own intuition, and that's something that's very important because the time itself isn't the only thing that counts. It counts what you practice and how you practice, and that is much more important than just how long you practice, because 3 hours of wrong practice are 3 hours of going in the wrong direction. It's like if you want to go, you're here in Germany, I live here in Berlin, I have my studio here in Berlin, so let's imagine I want to go to Italy and I start walking north, you know, that's just the wrong direction, and it would take you much longer to go to Italy. And that's what many people do with their practice. They walk and walk and walk and walk, but they walk in the completely wrong direction, so they will never arrive at their destination. That's an important thing to notice when it comes to practice. So yeah, a few hours every day is completely fine. Later in my studies at university, I practiced much longer. I practiced for many hours, but also there we had to wait a long time in queue. We had to wait for our rooms, so I couldn't practice the whole day at once. And the breaks are a very important part of the practice as well, because in the breaks, your brain will still continue practicing. As you might know this, if you're a pianist, that if you practice and you finish, you go to have dinner or you do your laundry or whatever, that you will still think of the things and even think of some fingerings or some technique that you just have practiced. So doing breaks is very crucial for your progress. That being said, as you have noticed already, the time alone isn't the only thing that is important, and it really depends on your goals. If you're an amateur and you just want to get to a very high level, 5 to 10 hours a week might be enough for that. If you want to become a professional pianist, I would recommend you to practice 3 to 4 hours of net practice every day, right? If you have very stressful phase, they can also be longer, but not for many months at a time. And if you're just a beginner, you know, you can also get along with 5 to 10 hours every week, something like that. And yeah, it's much more important what you do in this time. So if you want to make sure that you use your time in the best possible way, that you really make progress with little time, especially if you have a very tight schedule, then hit me up for a free strategy session. You can find that on aaronpearson.com/mentoring, or you can also send me a personal message on Facebook or Instagram. I read those messages myself. I answer those messages myself. And then we will find out if and how I can help you with your practice so that you don't waste any time and that you reach your destination in the right time and you're walking in the right direction. Thank you for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.